We now bring you David van Wyk, a lead researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation, to talk to us about the health hazards of staying underground for too long. This is some mine workers are currently still underground at the Gold 1 mine. As we heard a bit earlier on from the NUM, is that around 107 of those mine workers have now been resurfaced, as well as 20 of them being rescued by the security. Let's now speak to David. David, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. These miners have been staging a sit-in, some are alleging, but the NUM, of course, saying that it was a hostage situation. But be that as it may, what's common cause is that they've been underground now since Sunday. What are some of the risks of being underground for that long?
Well, I think that first and foremost, it's very hot underground, so people can suffer from heat exhaustion. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. Heat exhaustion can then lead to dehydration. And if they don't have access to sufficient water, dehydration can also become a very serious problem. Of course, the conditions underground are very dusty. The air is not clean at all. The longer you stay there, the more you breathe in toxic dust and so on, which is highly problematic. And then, of course, some of those workers have chronic medical conditions. Some of them might have HIV/AIDS and might be on ARV programs and things like that, and need to take their medicines very regularly. And they have to take them with food. So if they don't have access to food, then they can't take their medicines. Of course, we assume that they have the medicines that they have to take with them in the first place. So that might break the pattern in which they have to consume the medicines that they have. The other thing, of course, is that it seems as if there was some conflict between those who are having the sit-in and those who did not want to be in the sit-in, who felt that they were being kept hostage. And it seems like some violence broke out underground between them, and that some people actually got hurt and would need medical attention.
Yeah. Outside of the mine workers who may have any chronic illness that they are suffering from, how long can a human being survive underground?
Well, I don't think that you can survive very long if you don't have access to water and you don't have access to food. Of course, you're breathing this toxic dust that's very prevalent there underground. It depends on the individual and the health condition of the individual that is there. Generally, mine workers are very healthy. Given the kind of conditions under which they are working in South Africa, their nutritional status, and also the conditions under which they live on the surface and the first. So it can vary from person to person how they can actually survive.
Yeah. And then, of course, there is the element around the the psychological impact and effects of staying underground. And you just mentioned now as well that there is the alleged conflict as well that have taken place underground. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that the space in which they find themselves is very confined. Obviously, you don't see much sunlight. You don't experience normal weather conditions and so on that other people do. All of that leads to tension and conflict. If you put too many people in too small a space, that also can lead to tension and conflict between them. And then, of course, there will be the constant haggling between them about those who want to go to the surface, those who want to remain underground, which would aggravate the psychological situation in which they find themselves. So just that tension. So people suffer from tension, and people with problems like hypertension and high blood pressure and so on could also be very severely affected.
Yeah. The decision has also now been taken to send security guards underground to try and rescue more mine workers who have been held hostage. What would your advice be if Gold 1 was to ask you to give them advice on how to handle this situation?
Well, I would suggest that Gold 1 immediately enters into discussions with AMCU and sorts out this business of verification and recognition. If if AMCU has a majority membership, this will reflect in the payroll of the mine. And the mine can verify that by looking at its payroll, because the union deductions go off every month from that. And if indeed AMCU has a majority of workers at that mine, I don't see why the mine is dragging its feet, why they should have gone to, AMCU should have would have taken them to court. This is an issue that shouldn't have happened in the first place if proper labour relations were handled. I would fire the labour relations manager at that mine immediately.
Fire the labour relations manager at that mine immediately, but going forward, dealing with situations of this nature where you have disputes of this kind, and also, as you heard, that some mine workers are saying that actually they do want to jump ship and leave the NUM.
Well, I think that there are several problems with regard to labour relations in South African mines. One of them is the issue of subcontracting and labour broking, which is undermining the unions and causing conflict between them as they struggle for ever declining union base. You know, union membership is declining as the number of subcontracted and labour broking workers that are there increases. Now, the second thing is that we are approaching an election. The NUM is a very important partner to the African National Congress and a very important voter base to that Congress. And as the NUM is losing membership to AMCU, it's lost platinum already, it's lost most of coal, and now it seems like it's busy losing ground in gold as well. So that actually impacts on the electoral base of the African National Congress. So that's a real problem for the ruling party and for for NUM itself, and it is worrying because that will lead to increased conflict in the mines, unfortunately.
And speaking about the increased conflict in the mines as well, we're having a discussion with the production team this morning about what happened back in 2012 with Marikana. And of course, back then as well, we had the tension between AMCU as well as the NUM. Are there any lessons that should be drawn from the experience of 2012 in Marikana?
Well, I think that there are significant differences in that there's a surplus of platinum globally, so that the mining companies can continue to sell that surplus when workers are on strike. The 2014 strike, for example, the platinum price did not rise on the basis of the strike like it should have, because the amount of platinum to the global market would have declined. But the fact that there is a surplus of platinum means that platinum mines can sustain a strike for a very long time. I don't think gold mines can. I don't think gold mines can sustain an all-out strike for a long period of time. Especially given the fact that gold mining is in serious decline in this country. So I also don't think that this is a policing problem. I don't think that it's a security problem. I think this is a labour problem, and it could have been avoided in the first place.